was sort of reversed roles. I got plenty of ball, but that's the one day out of my whole career. We've never said that to many people. In fact, I've never said that to anybody. It was the one day I came out of a match thinking, I get my fill of it there. But I learned plenty.
Hello folks, thanks for tuning in for this interview with Antrim and Cargin's Michael McCann. This is brought to you by 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄. 𝐓𝐇𝐿 are wearable devices that are for vulnerable people. All you have to do if you find someone in the vulnerable situation, tap the phone and you can call their next of kin. You can find out where they live. You can also find out other details like their medical condition and other important information. 𝐓𝐇𝐿s are waterproof and don't need batteries. They work with Apple and Android phones and you don't need to download an app to use them. This is a great full circle interview where Michael talks about the importance of being all in from the beginning. Hello folks, thanks very much for tuning in here for how I got here with Michael McCann. Thanks so much for coming on for the interview, Mike. I really appreciate it.
No bother, Pete.
We always start off the interview process here. It's help out young kids and parents. When you first come on the senior setup, who's that first player that gave you a bit of a roast and then made you realise, whoa, this isn't underage football anymore?
Very, very lucky that I came into a Cargin setup that had won 2 championships in a row, senior championships in a row. So, and a lot of them were playing inter-county football at the time. So as a young lad coming into a team full of that, you get serious exposure. Now, the other side of that is that you can, not purposely, but like in a good team surrounded by good players that have plenty of experience and winning plenty, you can slot a young boy in out of the way into the corner forward or wing half back, or just get him away out of the way so he's not exposed as much. Whereas, and I don't, with no disrespect, a young lad coming into a team that isn't doing just as great, he could be thrown straight into the middle of the field up against the best players about, and you sort of hold on a second. So I was lucky in that I was never exposed as much. But I mean, throughout my days of coming in as a young boy at 16, playing against Kieran O'Neill's and 𝐲𝐢𝐭𝐡's in middle of the field, and Shinny McQuillan at training, and Kevin Doyle, and even brother Eamon, and it's just a litany of men that could play inter-county football. So probably at training I got my fill of it from the older lads like Big Kieran Butcher and these lads and 𝐲𝐢𝐭𝐡. So they were the boys that sort of set the tone, set the pace of it. But in my own personal opinion, I've never felt that I've got a complete roasting until one day we played, and this isn't me as a young lad, but one day we played 𝐀𝐋𝐿 in a friendly. Must have been around sort of 2008, that sort of time. It would have been maybe 21, 22. I can't remember in around that, but played 𝐀𝐋𝐿 down in Antrim, and I was marking. Do you remember Remy Mulgrew?
Oh yeah,
used to play
with all the dummies,
for Tyrone, all the fucking dummies. And I thought I could dummy, but and this young lad just coming onto the scene, playing midfield for 𝐀𝐋𝐿. 𝐀𝐋𝐿 weren't that great. I think we actually beat them well enough, but fuck, boy, did I chase coattails that day. Just
maybe 10 stone, would he?
Oh, what I'd say it'd been 10 or 11 stone. And listen, I done rightly on the ball. I got on the ball myself and all that, but that was the first time that I've ever felt this player was marking was probably technically better than me on the ball and trying to get the ball off him and trying to chase him down. And do you know what I mean? Yeah. I would usually be the person on the ball all the time, and they were coming after me, and it was sort of reversed roles. I got plenty of ball, but that's the one day out of my whole career. And we've never said that to many people, but in fact, I've never said that to anybody. It was the one day I came out of a match thinking, I get my fill of it there. But I learned plenty. I actually learned plenty from it. I sort of learned how to deal with it. Looking back on it after, thinking, right, what would I do again if I was marking that man? Do you know what I mean? And I sort of learned plenty from that. But that was the one real toasting I probably ever took.
Yeah, it's brilliant for young people to see that. Like, it happens to everybody. Everybody makes that person that just doesn't match up with them. Like, we all have, like the odd game, like 10 minutes in, some guys get 2 points off your days. Would you sit and say to yourself, right, do you say this is a one-on-one match-up to try and get the better of him? Or do you think, right, reset, relax, let's focus on the next half?
I would generally go and and I would say this to a lot of young people, do you know what I mean? And even, like, we have young boys coming through onto our team as well, but I would generally say, go and get your hands on the ball, and even if it's somebody to give you a 3-yard fist pass and you give them a 3-yard fist pass back, that wee thing then turns into a 6-yard fist pass the next time and a 6-yard back, then it turns into a 15-yard kick pass and a 15-yard kick pass back, and all them wee things then build up to your one-on-one with your man again and getting going. You know, you're easing yourself, as opposed to some people fall into the trap of, I haven't been going well for 10 minutes, get their hands on the ball and they try and beat 10 men, and it doesn't go well. And then their confidence is going this way while everybody else is coming up. So I would always say, don't chase the game, let it come to you, you know, and you get a wee hand pass and lay it off. That's all you need. That'll just start the ball rolling, you know, just something very, very simple. And that's what I would do. Now, depending on the player, sometimes in your head you're thinking, I need to up this fucker's hole here. And when he gets the next time, I'm going to clean through the back of him. You know, so because Martin Logan used to always say to me, I don't know, you know Martin Logan, he played for Cargin for
I know the name.
30.
Name's familiar.
Well, Martin Logan played cornerback, and he would admit to himself that he wasn't the greatest footballer in the world.
Yeah.
But in terms of being a cornerback, was as ferocious as you could get and intimidating. But he used to always say, regardless of where it was in the field, when the man was going for the very, very, very first ball, he just tramped over the top of him. So after that one ball, the next ball he's going for, he's thinking, where's this man at? Do you know what I mean? And that just starts getting the brain thinking in a different way than it should. He's concentrating on the man behind you as opposed to the ball in front of him. Mm-hmm. You know, and that, so there's a wee bit of that goes on, you know, the odd time, it depends who it is. You sort of think, right, I need to get through this man here just for a couple of times to see how he reacts or see how he thinks about things, you know.
That's a brilliant insight into, like, even though, you know, like, that guy's probably played 100 games at Cargin, and like, you talk about pre-match routines and getting ready for the game. It's like, that's his pre-match routine, even though it's after the whistle, and that's him ready to go.
That's it. And you do, and you'll always get away with one or two. You'll always get away early doors with one or two. There'll be no card. There'll be no this. There'll be no that. So his and I use it the odd time, depending on, again, how the game's going. He just thinks, if you have a man thinking about you and not the ball, that's you. You're in the front foot, and that's true. That's actually how it works, you know. And from a mental point of view, that's how it works.
So anyone listening there, like what Michael was saying there, is, would it be right in saying that, you know, if you're not having the best game, don't try and do a home run pass or a 20-yard or 30-yard pass. Don't try and make it extra better. It's like, stick to the basics, work hard, and the game will come back to you.
100%. That's it. Just simple stuff. And as I said earlier there, you just don't go chasing the game. Like, just let it come to you. So relax yourself, get your hands on the ball, simple pass. That simple pass will turn into a bigger simple pass, turn into and through time the confidence will start coming, you know, and that's how it is. And then other people around the team and other opposition players look at you and go, that's 5 or 6 balls in a row he's got on. I need to start thinking about him instead of thinking about what I'm doing. I'm going, right, I can't let him get another one, you know. So it's all mind games, like, you know. So that's how I would approach it. Just keep everything simple, and before you know it, everybody's thinking, this boy's on the ball too much. And if he's thinking about you, he's not thinking about his own game, you know. And that's how to approach it, in my opinion. But
magic, Mick, magic. So who's inspirations growing up? I've just got a wee photo here. What do you think? Would that be one of them?
Yep, 100%. Yep. I've a lot, but I would say, you know, even if you look there, we have a huge family. That's actually after we beat Cargin in the county final about 2 years ago with that photo. Now, my mother's a McAteer from Cargin. So I've actually a lot of relations in Cargin, you see. And so it sometimes gets a wee bit more heated than it should do, and probably there's a lot more in the line for most people, or for us, than there is other people. But in terms of inspiration, like, you know, I would say I've played football since I was 6 years of age, and I genuinely could count my one hand. This is Antrim, Cargin, schools football, university football. I would count my one hand the many football matches my mother's missed.
Really?
And we've all played football, so you can imagine the amount of matches that were on at the time, you know, between every night of the week, from different age groups, different levels, different. The one thing I would say about my parents are that it's not all about you have to be a footballer, or you have to be this, or you have to be that. It was never ever that. The one thing I took from them was, if you're going to be a footballer, do it properly. If you're not, that's fine, but don't waste people's time. You know, don't go to one training in 2 weeks and then show up for a week and do a full week's training and then not seen for a month. And, you know, if you're going to do it right. That's all, you know, that's all you have to do. Don't, you know, if you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. Don't don't act the bollocks, you know. So that's sort of the way we all took it. And as most people testify, my training anyway, and I'm sure Tomas and Paul and Eamon and all the girls who play football as well, all their ones play a lot of ladies football. Every one of them, that you get, unless they have a genuine excuse, I would honestly say out of the 10, none of them would miss a session, regardless, over 30 years, or, you know. So that's the one thing they've put on this. So it's not about being a footballer. My dad was a footballer and loves football, but I mean, he would never have said you have to be that, you know. He just would have said, if you're going to do it right.
That's a brilliant bit of advice, because, you know, if your dad's, there's some boys who have fathers that are great footballers, and there maybe is a pressure that comes with that.
Yeah.
And he's not putting any pressure on you at all. He's just saying, look, if you're going to do it right. Brilliant.
That's it. There's no, and you've probably been in my position. Everybody has them, and it doesn't make me dislike people personally from it. You know, your club has to have them as well. Like, people that come out for 2 weeks, aren't seen for a week with no excuse, no phone call, no nothing. Maybe don't show up to a match, then come out for a month and then disappear. When, you know, just random sort of things that go on in people's minds. And again, that's not from a personal point of view, I don't dislike people like that. You know, in fact, I have friends that would do that. You know, and I would say to them, why the fuck do you do that? Like, you know, why not just do the thing? But so I detest that myself from a playing point of view. You know, again, personally, I have no problem with people, and I understand people have commitments and people have other things. That's fine. But if you have commitments, then weigh it up at the start and say, right, can I do this properly? Can't do it properly, don't do it. That's just it. You know, it's like any walk of life. If you get into work and you said, well, in an interview, well, I can come into work here, but I'm not really going to do it right. They're going to go, well, then fuck off. They don't want you. You know, right? Well, I'm not overly great at it, but I'll do it properly as best I can. Well, you know what? We'll give you a shot at it. You know, that's just the way people operate. So I would say to anybody that is thinking about whatever sport or walk of life they're in, just do it right. That's all. Regardless, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. Nobody has an issue with that. But if you're going to do it 100%. And we're lucky in Cargin that 95% of the people, we have less of those type of people than a lot of other clubs. And I think that's the biggest difference in football clubs and sports clubs. Sorry, I'll say football, but that's the biggest difference in sports clubs. The less of those type of people you have, the more successful you'll be. And that's
massive, because it's tough. Like, some of those people are talented, really talented players, and just maybe aren't on the boat.
It demoralizes a team and a setup, and starts bringing, you know, it starts bringing a wee bit of animosity around teams and picking of teams then, because, well, hold on here, he hasn't been here in a month and I have, and I know this system, and I know we've done this setup, and we know how to play this, but he doesn't, but he's better than me. Well, how is this, you know? So in the long run, it's not sustainable. That's what you have to understand. You know, so it's just not sustainable.
If you were giving advice to a manager who has those type of players, obviously it depends on the situation. Would you say give them 1, 2 chances, 3 chances, or just cut?
Well, if I was a manager, which I'm not, and I don't think I could be one, but I don't know. I would go to a squad at the start of the season and say, I would try and have a rough idea of what I'm going to implement through the year, and I would say, here's what our plan is. You know, it doesn't have to be to exact night, but I mean, we're going to be training twice during the week and once the weekend from now to X on these are the matches that I think, and this is the gym sessions I think we're going to do. And there's a rough plan, give or take a tweak or two. This is how I plan to do this. I would go to I would go to everybody for starters, and I would just say, can you commit to this?
Individually? Now, a phone call?
Individually, I would ask them all individually, can you commit to this? And if they look at that and say, yes, I can. Now, I understand things happen. People go on holidays and miss a session. I understand all that, but can you commit to this? If the answer to that is yes, then I expect you to be there. If the answer is, well, I don't know, I have this on and I have that on, and I'm supposed to be going here and I'm supposed to be doing that, I just say, do you know what? Let's set it aside. Maybe next year, if I'm back, we'll sort it out. That's what I would do personally.
That's super, mate. Super insight. So see, like, just thinking about like primary school, your younger days, primary school, and also that leads well into sports as well. Like, we hear a lot of people saying you should concentrate on one sport, early doors, 10,000 hours, get to become the best that way. People, you didn't grow up, like you're saying, do you think that's true? Or do you think kids should be playing through primary school and secondary school loads of sports? What advice would you give?
I would play as many sports as I could. I understand it's not easy. Like, as I say, a couple, 3 young lads there, and I could only imagine if they were playing 3 or 4 sports each and you running out every other night, so I understand how people don't play as many sports, or the young ones don't. But I mean, if it was me and it was possible to do it, I would have been playing as many sports as they can. Every one of them gives you some sort of benefit and gives you some sort of edge, there's nothing. And it's only in the last sort of 10, 12 years that I would have said basketball had come up into that. And I would class now, obviously, Olympic weightlifting as a sport, which I would never have thought of back then either. So and now gymnastics is a massive thing as well. So see all those, like, I would be putting them out to as many sports as they can, in my opinion, because every one of them gives you something different. I don't think concentrating on one is ever, because one is only ever going to give you one discipline. You know what I mean? It doesn't really give you an insight into it. Plus the fact to say that, you look at, and I've watched a few interviews, you look at some of the top sportsmen in America, some of them, that broke through, when they're 15, 16, 17, chose their path in which they wanted to go on, which you obviously have to do at some point, but they all said, they were good at multiple sports. You know what I mean?
What were yours?
I would have played, obviously, Gaelic. I played a lot of soccer.
Who
played
for?
a bit of basketball. I played up in Randallstown. I started out playing for Randallstown Athletic when I was about, must have been 10 or 11 maybe in around that time. And then obviously, and I played right up to was maybe 15, 16. And then obviously I sort of tailed away to Gaelic and county. So you as you well know, the club season, county season kicked off in October back then. You trained all winter, club season. So all that sort of stuff starts to fall away. But when I could in the off season, even when I was 20, 21, 22, I would have played in Belfast for a couple of soccer teams over the winter. And then I played a wee bit, went up and played a wee bit with Donegal Celtic at a time. But just when they're in I just sometimes just do you know what it's like when you've no real drive for something and you're like, I'd rather actually have a bit of time off. So, but I would have played it. So I would have had Gaelic soccer, boxing, obviously, at a young age, 4 or 5 years, and then played a bit of basketball at school and different. So probably 3 or 4 sports at that stage. But back then, Pete, there was, you'd only had really, bar adding rugby into that, there wasn't a whole pile of other things you could have played. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like now where you have all this gymnastics and hockey. Well, it probably was hockey, but there wasn't all those Olympic weightlifting and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and then talk about the boxing. Like, I didn't know you're an Ulster champion. Get back quiet.
Well,
it's on the nibs, and he was big in the swimming. Kevin Niblock.
Yep, Conor Murray, I think, was a big swimmer too. But the boxing, the 3 of us, my dad took the 3 of us when we were about 7. Well, I was about 8, so them, I must have been 8 or 9. Them boys were in around. Well, Tomas went first. I don't know if Paul came at them, but I was 8 or 9. Tomas was 6 or 7. We just went to All Saints and boxed for. At that time, I don't think it was anything to do with actually. He wasn't overly worried about getting a fight. Getting a fight. It wasn't really about that. But at that time, early 90s, like, I used to come out of boxing at the winter and I was flying fit. Do you know what I mean? And that was the winter because then it's not like now we're sort of underage football and all runs all year and all the sports tournaments. Like, back then, the lowest age group was maybe under 10. So you were doing nothing until you were sort of 7 or 8. I started training when I was 6 for the under 10s, like, and 6 to 10 at that stage is massive, in terms of physicality and size and everything. So, but we used to go to boxing then over the winter and do all that sort of stuff, and I've done 4 or 5 years and a couple of fights and different bits and pieces.
That's magic, Mike. And like, for anyone who doesn't know, All Saints Boxing Club steeped in history. I think would have been Jerry Hamill coaching you, or who was
Jerry Hamill? Yeah, the Hamills were there. Yeah, so Dermot and all's there now, and Tommy.
Dermot there, and TJ.
He was there. TJ was there. So that's how I would know them. Like, I wouldn't know them really well, but I would know them to talk to and say hello to. Do you know what I mean? So that's how, from way, but like, obviously, near the guts of 30 years ago. So I'd still know them all from that. You know what I mean?
And see, how often were you going to the boxing training? Was it once a week?
Oh, well, I was going maybe 2, 3 times a week at that stage. Yeah.
Brilliant. And would you send your kids there now? If there was
100%.
time, would you recommend?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Great setup. Great bunch of lads, and very well. Like as you well know, me from Toom going into
Toom.
Ballymena, sure, who would I have known going in there? And it was, you know what I mean? And now looking back, you know, it's still chatting to those lads, you know what I mean? So, like, that's 28 years ago, like, and you're still talking away to people and having a chat and knowing them all. And
boxing. So tell us about, just dive into the Ulster fight you won, or the Ulster competition you won.
It was up in the King's Hall. No, up in the Ulster Hall. So I must have been. It's hard to put. It must have been maybe 11. So I had got to the Ulster finals and was going up to fight. And you know, I remember my very, very, very first fight. And fuck, that's some shock to the system going into boxing. Like at that age, well, not even that, but at that age, getting a slap in the mouth. Like Mike Tyson always says, the plan goes out the window once you get a slap in the mouth. You know, like that's just that is it. Like you're just going, what the fuck? You know, you have all these great fucking plans to do this, that, and other, but once you get a slap in the nose, like you just, jeez, I just remember that thinking, and it took me a bit around, or maybe a wee bit more, to actually realize, holy shit, I need to get going here. I mean, I'll never forget my very, very first fight in the hall. I think it was in the hall up at All Saints. You know, the hall beside it, there's this the gym, and then there's maybe like a wee community hall type thing. I remember it was in there. I remember just getting fucking boy just hit me fair in the nose first day, and it just, you know, you sort of, do you know what I mean? It's some shock. Did you ever do it yourself? No?
I remember one time I did a wee bit of training up at the club, and Sean McVeigh said to me, we're doing a bit of sparring at the club, and he says, you come up and try it. And I swear, I had to say aye, of course. And like literally as soon as I said aye, I was crapping myself for the next 24 hours. And then I went in and he beat the lugs off me. But it was it's a humbling experience. Like, but it is. It wasn't after it. Just the last question in the box, and be nervous getting in. Was there ever a point, like, even you, top athlete, you were going, I don't know if I will go into this ring, you know?
Oh, aye. And even sparring, like, even like we've done, you know, fight nights and different bits and pieces. So as you just said about Sean, people are built for that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very reactionary. You know, if somebody in a football field hit me a slap in the mouth, you know, I would react to it. But it's very rare I would go look on it. Do you know what I mean? And in boxing, it's sort of the same. You know, it's sort of, it nearly took me that to sort of settle in, to realise, right, I was chatting to this boy before this fight. You know, I know that lad, you know, fucking feel a bit bad going, hitting him a slap here. Do you know, and then he comes and hits me with 10 slaps in the mouth, you know, and then you're going, shit. Do you know, I was one of them sort of type of people, you know, and, but I probably would be nervous. I think you're nervous about things you're not comfortable or confident in, you know. If you, it's like an exam. If you prepare so well for an exam, there's no nerves going into it. If you've done fuck all for an exam, you're going in going, what's going to happen here? Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, and that sort of leads me to one of the questions I was going to ask you there, but mate, we'll jump into it now. It's like nerves, pressure. How do you deal with it? You know, there's sometimes you be sitting in a changing room and you're nervous for no reason out of nowhere, but how do you cope with pressure, and how do you cope with nerves before a match and during it?
I don't have nerves during matches. Ever during it now, but I do in the lead up, and once I sort of get up out onto the field, as in warm up out onto the field, I'm fine. I wouldn't say fine, but you know, a lot of things going through your head. But I would actually have a lot of sort of anxiety. I would call nerves anxiety. People call it nerves, but it's actually anxiety. You know, the butterflies and the fucking, you know, and a few big games recent, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years. You know, I would even to be the point that struggle to get to sleep in the week leading up to match, you know, big games, you know, that sort of a thing. And it's not about me not having confidence in myself or the team. I'm one of these sort of people that nearly think about, right, what happens if we lose this? What's the reaction going to be, or how am I going to deal with the week after we lost this match? It's not me thinking, fuck, am I going to play well here, or is the team going to play well, or, you know, I think about sort of the aftermath of, you know, a disappointment, you know, so I'm more anxious about the disappointment that might follow this game if we lose.
Right.
I know that might be a strange way to think, but that's just the way I am. I don't know why. I've plenty of confidence in myself and how I play, and, you know, and how I think I'll contribute to the team, and I know that I've plenty, from a Cargin point of view, I know of plenty of lads around me that will step up to the mark as well. Do you know, like, I'm sure there's teams that go out there and you're thinking, right, well, do you know what? There's maybe one lad here that you could depend on, and if he doesn't play, we are fucked here. Do you know, I'm lucky in Cargin that we've got plenty of those players that if Jimmy doesn't play well, we know somebody else is going to step up, and so that way. So I'd be more anxious about the aftermath if we don't win. That's really how I take defeat really, really badly. That's the truth. From a point that I don't speak to people, you know, and I'm sort of one of them people. I could disappear for 2 or 3 days on my own type sort of person.
I'm saying in the younger days, I'm sure that was terrible. But it's still with you now.
Still worse now. If I'm being honest with you, worse now. There's less, and I don't know if it's worse now because there's an expectation on us to be successful now. So like Cargin have won 4 out of the last 5 senior championships in Antrim. So maybe once you're beat, we've been winning for so long that sort of come down after that of these boys are, and you get the usual, the season's even started, Cargin are done, them boys are too old, X, Y, Z, you get the same shit every year, and I'll be honest with you, I've been hearing that for 15 years, since more maybe, since Cargin were beaten in 2000 and St. Galls beat them in 2002 in the championship and St. Galls went in that run. I've heard every year, because we lost a lot of the 2000 team and started to redevelop the younger lads coming through, I have heard every single year for probably 20 years that we're finished and done. So I don't really pay heed. Do you think it's silly?
Do you think it's silly?
It does.
Because I'm sure it drives you.
People don't understand when you hear that sort of stuff. And again, as I just said, we have enough leaders, so a lot of boys take that personally. It's not like it's one person. There's a lot of people taking it personally within our squad. Like, and we've won a championship there last year that, we sort of cruised to the final. We were lucky to get out of the first day, but the replay, I thought we should have, they came back twice to draw it. I thought we sort of deserved to win the replay, but I mean, you could say we were lucky last year. We won by a point. The year before we beat Craigan by a point. So like, I don't understand this sort of Cargin are done. I can understand if they hadn't won something in a couple of years and you go, that team's fun. But I don't know how you classify a team as done when they're actually still the reigning champions. I just don't get that concept.
It's so interesting you bring that up because that's fueling you, that's fueling your pressure. So I'd follow some of the NBA players, and there's the generation that, the American media, they're dying to someone to fall off the pedestal. So it's like they don't realise, as an amateur sportsman, the amount of work that you're doing on an ongoing basis looking after yourself. It's like, would you say where would you put your physique at the minute compared to your overall career? Like, what would you say it's at? Would you say it's at its best it was? It's still 10 out of 10?
I would say for the last 3 or 4 years, mine has been, I'm in the best I've ever been by a long stretch. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing more than I was ever doing. If that doesn't, when I was 18 to 28, I trained every single day. I don't train every single day now. So by default there, I'm not doing as much as what I was doing, but what I'm doing is I'm doing the right training, number one, the right type of training, and number 2, I'm working harder for the times that I'm training. And so I would say now, maybe not at the present minute, because you're obviously only 6 weeks into, and people look and go, geez, he's struggling a bit there, injuries and a few weeks, bits and pieces. But I mean, in terms of a longer stretch of period, the last 3 or 4 years, probably in the best shape that I've ever been, and physically.
Fantastic.
If I'm being honest.
So I'm going to dive right in that. Like, what's Michael McCann's week look like for training without giving away your trade secrets? But for a young lad,
well, as long as the type of training's right. But like my general week would be most weeks 3 sessions with the club. 3 pitch sessions. Now, obviously, with the COVID thing, the structure, like Damien would have had us a collective doing one, and has done for the last 3 years. But obviously, at the minute with the COVID thing, it's sort of changed it slightly. But we would have done a collective gym session once a week with Cargin, and have done that for 3 years now. So it would have been 3 times a week, and is 3 times a week with Cargin. And then I would do 2 gym sessions a week on my own, because the collective thing's not happening at the minute.
How long are those gym sessions?
They're about anywhere between 45 minutes in an hour, maybe. Try. Listen, I'm not saying this is be all and end all. I'm not saying, you take some strength and conditioning coach, he could pick holes in what well, you shouldn't be doing that twice a week, and you shouldn't be doing this twice a week. I get all that, but I do what I feel comfortable with. But I would try and get, I would try and get some sort of squats, strength session done. Not max out or anything like that, just try and maintain squat strength that I have. I would try and maintain deadlift strength that I have, and I would try and get in Olympic weightlifting session once a week.
And see, in terms of your effort, you're saying it's maintenance, or are you going, would you say 50% of your max, 60, 70, 80?
Anywhere up to 90 maybe of max. Yeah. So in season 90% is more than enough, in my opinion.
Yep.
If you've matches and trainings, like going for a 1RM front squat or back squat is going to, as you well know, is going to blow your brains out. Like, do you know what I mean? So, and you don't want to be to that level of fatigue, because it actually takes you long enough to get over that. So if you're going for sort of 3 RMs and 90%, or going for a heavy 3 up to maybe 90% of your front squat once a week, more than enough to maintain the strength you have. Do you know what I mean? In season, it's not all about trying to hit new PBs. Like, you're not trying to do that. You're just trying to keep what you have, whatever you built up over your pre-season. Try and keep that. That's and develop that into power. So I would do the Olympic weightlifting to try and keep my development of power and explosiveness, that type of thing.
Whenever you come home from that lifting session, Kevin Niblock says he always has a pint of milk after every training session and every match. Have you any go-tos in terms of recovery?
You would know by looking at Niblock. He's been drinking milk since he was fucking 1. The man's calves on him like my quads, hasn't he? I would be just some sort of protein, like, I would try and get maybe 150 grams of protein in a day. So, like, if I had that 150 grams in before I go to training, when I come home, I sort of know I've already hit my protein, so I don't really need to go chasing it. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I would just try and get that level. So if I have 30 grams of protein to get after training, I would, whether it be eggs or whatever way you want to put it, anything at all. But I mean, generally, as you just said, if you come in late at night and you can't be bored, I would maybe have a protein shake just to supplement what I have. But I mean, one protein shake a day isn't going to make an ounce of difference if you're, if an average meal is trying to hit 150 grams of protein in a day, and you're throwing one shake in the after training, doesn't mean you're going to recover. Like, do you know what I mean? It's mental to think that, so you still need to be hitting it. You still need to be trying to hit those levels all day, every day, because they're the main thing for recovery, and repair. So that's what I would try and do. I would just try and get those levels of protein on a daily basis, and regardless of when I take them. But I mean,
you can ask you or anything like that. There are no people you.
I would use that MyFitnessPal actually a bit. And I solely use it literally just to measure my protein intake.
Right.
As the man says, we're not professional athletes. Some lad comes along and says, "Well, I have MyFitnessPal app, and protein's perfect, and carbs are perfect, and fats are perfect, and I've done this and I've done that and I've done the other," and I'm going, "Well, that's great, right? But you're out last night and you get about 3 hours sleep and you're absolutely dying. Would you not need to sort that bit out first before you nail down into the exact percentages of carbs and proteins? If you're out 3 days a week and you're eating McDonald's 4 days a week and you're not going to training, you haven't been to training this week because you pissed off golfing, say, for amateur athletes, nail the small things: sleep, recovery, getting to training, working on your skills. And then if you want to start really focusing in on carb intake and fat intake and all that, okay, fair enough. But I mean, there's no point in doing that if you haven't slept for 3 days because you're in the wreck. Do you know what I mean?
Are you an ice man? Do you put some ice on? Do you jump in Epsom salts, or are you? Maybe some people use heat for recovery.
Not really, Pete. No.
Oh, yeah.
No. There's no point in me lying. I would love to say that I'm the ultimate professional, but no, I don't. No. I would have hurt something.
Yeah.
And I maybe would, and I'm not saying it's not right or wrong, by the way. I'm just saying the way I do it. I maybe would if say we had a game on a Sunday or a Monday and we'd ignore a game 2 days later and ignore, if there was a sort of tight schedule, I would think, right, you know what, I'll get into the ice bath, try and recover quicker here. But I mean, in a general week, not really, unless I hurt something, unless I was injured or strained something.
That's brilliant, Mick, because it just shows some boys think that's religiously, and they think if they don't get their ice or their Epsom salt bath, and their head goes, and that was the reason why I lost. So it's good to see an insight from a top player that way.
But the one thing I learned over the years, Pete, is that it's as much a mental game. So if that makes you feel good, do it. Because I remember me getting into matches, and maybe the week I used to be in the gym 3 days a week when I was 23, 24. And I remember getting into maybe something happening during the week and me not getting in at all. And me going out to play a match on a Sunday and hadn't been to the gym in 6 days, say, and in my head thinking, have I lost strength? And I don't feel as if I'm as strong. And complete nonsense. Like, probably recovered better than I've ever done because I took that time off. It's a mental. And then when I have been to the gym mentally, I'm prepared going, I have everything ready here. So for people that do that, I wouldn't say stop. If it makes you feel good and makes you feel as if you're on top of your game, 100% do it. Do you know what I mean?
That's brilliant, Mike. And like, again, we were touching on how you deal with pressure. And from what I'm getting from you, it's like preparation mitigates pressure, would you say? Or anxiety?
100%. It brings anxiety down. I think, in my opinion, like, if you're prepared and you've done everything, don't get me wrong, anxiety and nerves, as you want to say, are really, really good. I find I put my best performances in actually when I'm really, if you want to call it nervous, really nervous going into games.
Really?
Actually, because I'm in a bubble, and I find nerves and anxiety put you in a wee. Do you ever hear people talking about the zone and I fucking in the zone and he's in the zone and he's not looking at anybody and he's not. And after the match, when the match is over, I can't really remember much of the game.
It's like
surreal. So, do you know what I mean? Because you're not sort of. And I think anxiety and nerves does that. So I think nerves are a really, really good thing if you use them right. If you can.
What are you saying to yourself mentally, Mike? Whenever the nerves are kind of going, this is you're actually saying to yourself, this is good. This is what I want.
This is, and if I don't have them, I'm wondering to myself, why? What is going on here? I sort of start questioning myself. But I know for a fact if you have nerves, it's a really, really. In my opinion, it's a good thing if you use it right. If you let it overcome you a wee bit, your boy's broken and sort of hiding and don't want to be, and no energy and haven't slept at all and all that sort of stuff, and that affects your performance, obviously. But I mean, if you can manage it to a certain point, I find that having nerves will get the best performance out of you. That's my sole opinion. I find myself playing better championship football than I would going down to play a league match against a team that probably know we're going to be up to 15 points. Because I'm not nervous and I'm not taking it. I take it serious, but I don't.
I get it. Yeah.
I don't let it overcome me a wee bit. Now,
the last thing about when you come into your and when it comes to after a game or training session, is like, how does your wife know that when you're in a bad mood to just stay clear? Or, how do you just communicate that? I know it's a tough.
Well, it's not really like Shannon could tell without going to a match when I walk in the door whether we've won or we've lost. Like she doesn't even need to ask.
As a top athlete who was out, I don't know how many times a week you were out back in the day, back in your 20s, were up when you were recording. Would you give any advice to you're going, I can't go to this wedding or I can't go to this? Was it all about? Would you suggest it's all about communication between the two of you when you were growing up?
Well, I was in terms of us going out and from a sporting background, I was very, very lucky because Shannon was out probably more than I was. Yeah. Shannon played camogie for Rossa. She played football for St. Galls. She played county football for Antrim and played a bit of county camogie for Antrim, all in the one time. And then she was in the fire service, so she was working sort of night shifts as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like we would have went weeks where she would have been going out to train at 6 o'clock, and then from 6 to 7 one training, and then from 7:30 to 8:30 the other training, and then back in, and that would have been going on every day, and then night shift. And so I was lucky that she was probably out more than me, if you know what I mean. So
it was grand between the two. It was grand, like
it was 100%. Like like for instance, Shannon and Ulster camogie final back in 2010, maybe, and around that, or 11.
Yep.
And it was a brother's wedding was on up in Belfast, and we went to the mass. I drove her down to the athletic grounds in Armagh while the wedding was on, the meal was on, and watched the match. She get shared up, and we drove back up the road, and we're back up for 8 o'clock that night, and her brother's wedding. So that, so like, and I had no issue with that, and she had, we're just lucky that that's the way things worked out. Like there was no, like, whereas I would understand that there's people there that from a Gaelic background that if the missus' brother was getting married and she had no interest in sport, and you says I'm going to leave this wedding and go, it would be like, what? And I left my best friend's wedding to go and play a league match against Portland in Toom one day.
There you go.
So, like, drove from Cookstown to Toom, drove back, like, and there wasn't an eyelid about it. He never said anything to me, and I never, so really, I'm lucky that I'm very, very lucky that a lot of the people that around me are surrounded by me understand how much
passion
I have for football, and you know what I mean, and they know it's not me being ignorant. It's just, but if you set that out at the start, you see the problem people have is, if they don't take it seriously enough at the start and don't show that they've the passion for it at the start, and then 3 or 4 years down the line they start really starting to go to weddings and match days and stuff. It's like, what are you doing? You missed a training because you were away drinking with your mates one day, but now you want to go to a match when there's a wedding on. Whereas if you set your stall out and train hard early doors, maybe the girlfriend or whoever you're going to
understands, or he or she
understands from day dot. Then 3 or 4 years into it, there's no surprises to what you're doing. I think that's the only way to manage it.
Tell us about, this is just me looking in. You're an Antrim lad. You're an Antrim man, proud. You go to school in Derry, and we know the Derry lads are very confident. And you go to St. Pius, and then you transfer to, if anyone here is not aware of St. Pat's Mahara, I think they've won the Hogan Cup, maybe the most out of any school have there. They're definitely
I think
All-Ireland Cup school.
Yeah.
You went, what was it like in St. Pius? Just talk about St. Pius going through there, playing football, the Antrim lad, and understand, you mentioned to me before, you weren't the biggest, you weren't the strongest coming through, you were kind of a late developer.
I had a lot of school changes in my days. I started out in primary school at New Row in Castledawson.
Right.
Then I transferred back into Toom.
Right.
Then I went to St. Pius's, and then I transferred to St. Pat's. So it's I had 4 schools over my 14 years. I had 4 schools, but a wee bit. At a young age, it was fine. The first year's fine. Going into first year's fine because everybody's new. So there's no issue that way. Transferring schools in the middle of and doing it twice isn't easy. Because schools are like, I suppose between you've got the big men and the bullies, and you've got this and you've that and all. So you sort of have to find your feet a wee bit. But solely in St. Pat's, we transferred over. I was lucky that a few people from St. Pius's went along with me, and a couple of them ended up in my class and different bits. So I wasn't too bad that way.
Why St. Pat's? But over other St. Pat's, St. Mary's?
I tried to go to St. Mary's maybe, and I don't think the grades were just what they wanted. And I had 7 other family members went to St. Mary's, Marfeld. And I went to get in. And my grades weren't that, they were grand. Like they just weren't, they just obviously weren't what they expected. I tried to get in. They know the family. They know there's a bit of a, back then. No, didn't budge. So I went to St. And listen, I'd applied to both. It wasn't as if it was all St. Mary's, and if I didn't get in, I would go to St. Pat's. I applied to both, and both were sort of bouncing off the same. And then it went to St. Pat's and got accepted and started in there. And as you just said, 2 years later, St. Mary's got their very first Macrory Cup final, and we beat them in casement.
There you were waiting for them. There you were.
Was playing 14.
No, I never got to play Macrory. I never played Macrory or Macfarney or anything like that. So, but one of my best friends, Brendan Hassan, played it, and he said at St. Pat's Mahara, and he did the same as you. He transferred over. He said Macrory Cup football of all the training he's done, he says that's the thing that helped him go from up the most levels. What would you think? Would you recommend young people to look into that?
100%. Macrory football is the first time you really get that sense of commitment, and I actually think that's the thing that sets you to the point that you sort of go, either I want to do this or I don't. because that is the first time in your life that you get to a point where they're training after school 4 days a week. You know, there's 5 school days in a week, and you're training after them after school 4 of them. And after school's to 5 o'clock or 5:30 now doesn't seem that bad. But when you're a lad that finishes school at 3 o'clock, staying into 5:30, it's like,
and it's dark,
this is like the longest, and it's dark. It's all winter training, but Macrory football is the first time that you sort of find that, geez, if I'm not committed to this, you know, this will make me committed, or else I'll just drop out. There's no in between with this sort of type training.
Yeah.
But all school football I find sets you up really, really, really well, because you're in a bunch of people that you don't really know. You're playing against players you don't really know all the time. You know, it's very, you know as well as I do, Pete. You play for Ballymena. You get used to the same teams, the same players. You know who they are. You talk to certain individuals. You know, you just get comfortable in your surroundings. Like, so, schools football is the complete opposite of that. County football is the same as club, only slightly different, but because you know everybody, you're still comfortable. Whereas schools football is so many people from so many backgrounds playing teams from so many different places, and I think it's really, really sets you up to really find your commitment level.
Sure. First of all, were you key players straight away, and did you have to work to it? And what advice would you give to a young person who is transferring schools?
The answer to your first question is no, I wasn't a key player straight away, and in fact, in my opinion, some people might argue, I actually found it really, really difficult, really, really hard. You know, just to give you a quick insight, I went into St. Pat's in lower six. Gay Miners had won the All-Ireland that year, and I think St. Pat's maybe had 8 or 9 of that team in the school in upper sixth at that time. So, like, my aspirations at that time were go out to training, see how I go. Nobody knows who I am, so you're in the back foot already.
No one really knew. Like, you was like,
nobody really knew. No, not really. Like, I was 16. Like, you know, I was young. I just turned 17. So nobody really knew who I was or whatever. So I just went in and said, right, I'll go out and train. There's a thing called like the 𝐷Hardy Cup. So like the lower sixth sort of played in it, and the upper sixth played. So I went out to a few trainings, done in bits and pieces, and trained away, and then went into the very first Macrory Cup group game and started full forward. And at that stage, I was a middle of the field, wing, half back type player. So it was hard to read between the lines of, well, just fire this lad into full forward, let him hang himself here, and then when he shite, we'll send him up the road. You know, it was hard to read between the lines of all that.
Those thoughts come into your head.
That type of stuff. I would pride myself on generally having a really good gut feeling for something. As simple as standing in a training field and somebody picking teams to play each other within a training. I could nearly work out I'm not starting at the weekend, or even though it's not obvious, and even though it's not the A team against the B team, I just know this is slightly changed and he's in there, and I can nearly. But anyway,
how do you react
all
to
that
that
sort of stuff?
How would you react to that? You say, I'm just going to get it, or sack him, or whatever.
I don't react. Initially, I always react, up yours type. That's that, and I take it bad. There's no point in me lying. I don't take it well. I don't take. But what I would say is that all those situations have come out of well in the end, in the long run, and I've dug my heels in. And even people think that when things go wrong, and you say, yeah, but if things go wrong, the reflection of somebody is how they react to that, and blah blah blah. And somebody telling you that, you look at them and go, geez, he handles that really well. But you don't handle it really well. You sound as if you handle it really well and say, well, I went back and I dug my heels in. But for the week after, I was fucking blinding, and that's it. I wouldn't speak to people, and I take it really, really bad. But in the long run, I stick it out and stick it out and stick it out, and then finally it comes right. So I take it really bad. So I started that game. I know the very first game I scored a goal and 2 points in the first Macrory Cup match, and I was over the moon up in 𝐀𝐋𝐿. I played all the group games of that year, and maybe scored 3 or 4 points a game type thing. I was moving really well for a man that never played really full forward for start. And then the way it works in Macrory football is it breaks. So like the group stages stop around November time, December time, and then you've got 2 months before the quarterfinals. And as you well know, over Macrory school football, they train over Christmas, Boxing Day. You're off school and you're going into training and beaches and boking and all this sort of stuff. Done all that. Yeah. Done all that. went into the quarter-final of the Macrory, dropped, having played all the games, dropped. Nobody mentioned a word to me. Nobody said, you're dropped because of this, you dropped because of that. We were beat. Right. Nobody came back to me, said sorry for that. No, never spoke to them. They just dropped me and that was it. I thought, what the fuck is this? And I then had a wee bit of a personal thing for the manager, a wee bit, and I said, right, that's it. Upper sixth, I'm done. I'm not going back. Came out upper sixth year, didn't go out, didn't play. Then they asked me to come out, went out, didn't get on any games, left again. I'm not training to sit on the bench. They scraped through the league game, and then I got asked again to come back out. And I went out and started all the games the whole way to the Hogan final.
Sorry, Michael, just jump back to the Hogan, the changing room. You're going to. I think it's different for forwards because when you're transferred to a new team, basically as a new school. There's somebody in there who's been looking at that full forward spot since he was first year. And here's this lad from Antrim coming in. He's just took this full forward spot. How did you deal with, like, there was probably a clique of boys that were maybe not as friendly. Maybe they were. Maybe there were some boys not as friendly to you. How did you handle that? I'm just focused. I don't give a hit about these boys.
I was lucky that actually a lot of our team, this is a strange thing to say, but a lot of our team, when I look back, were either new to the school or slightly younger than the year they were in, if that makes sense. And then a lot of them hadn't played actually any football. Like in my upper sixth year, 𝐬𝐿𝐭𝐡 came in. 𝐬𝐿𝐭𝐡 didn't play when I was lower sixth, but in upper sixth, 𝐬𝐿𝐭𝐡 came in as a hurler and started midfield for the whole of Macrory and came out of nowhere. So he was as much to blame for the boy that was up in midfield since he was first year as I was for the boy. So there was a lot of that going on. So I was lucky that way. And to be fair, I was very, very lucky that 99% of the lads that we were playing were all great fellas and all, I have to say, and in fact, a lot of the players were probably more supportive of me because I was new than I was the lads that were already there, if that makes sense. They sort of watched out for you a wee bit. So, and I would still talk, highly and talk a lot to the lads that I played with back then. But you're right. But once you get up to that level of physicality of Macrory football, it's a totally different level than anything you would have played club-wise, county-wise. And Macrory football is first stage of your career where you really do realise this is big boy stuff. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, when you're playing against, for instance, university teams, they're coming down to play you. So you have a friend. Well, like we would have played Jordanstown, say, in friendlies there that you have freshers there that could be 21, 22. They're just actually happen to be in the fresher year. So, I'm 17 playing against lads at 20. Or 21. It's a big step. So my point is that if you have any aspiration to find out where you really stand, how passionate you are, and how much you really want to play football at a high level, getting buried into schools football is exactly where you'll find that out, number one. And number two, trying to get buried into a decent level of lower and upper sixth football, whether that be Macrory. Ideally Macrory because it's the highest level.
Yes.
But I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that McLaren football is as heavy or isn't, I never played it, but my point is that's the first taster where you'll find out, am I passionate enough to play this sport?
Surely you were never cut from anything, were you?
I was, yeah. I was, well, for starters, that rejection of that Macrory year was a really, really big one for me. Like, I struggled badly with that. These are small things, but really big in how I panned out. But I got dropped for a senior county final in 2005. Played every game the whole way up, and completely out of the blue dropped for the county final with Cargin. I got cut from compromise rules squad. I went for a compromise rules squad, played for Ulster and all that stuff, and then got the last 30 or whatever, and go and get your name called out, and nothing comes.
Oh.
People like, it's only you're in that. It's only like, I don't think anybody that hasn't been cut could deal with somebody that. As a manager, they say the best managers are actually the worst footballers, and that doesn't always. Obviously, that's not always the case. But they say some of the best managers actually were terrible footballers. Like Jurgen Klopp. I'm only using this as an example. Jurgen Klopp wasn't a great footballer. Jose Mourinho, I don't even think played football. Rafa Benitez was shocking. But really the point I'm getting to is that those people understand how limited footballers, they know how to coach a skill, because the best footballers, the skills come naturally. So they actually don't know how to say, well, how do you do that? How do you do that certain skill? How do you do that certain skill? Well, I don't really know. It just comes naturally. Whereas if you ask somebody that doesn't know how to do it, that has learned how to do it, they'll be able to say, well, actually, this is how I done it. I done this first, done this second, done this third, and that. And they say, so coaching-wise, that's the way to be it. So my point is, good coaches who have been cut from panels and disappointment and knows how to deal with that sort of stuff from a personal point of view, can deal with that when they go to manage players and manage teams and know, right, this is how I should manage teams and break news to players, because this is how I would have wanted my bad news to be broke to me. Do you know? And so I have it that, like, I've been dropped and cut from at a young age from plenty, and it is hard. Like, I don't mind me saying this. Like, I was cut from the Cargin that year, the Cargin final, for the county final. I played every single game up to that.
What age were you?
I was 2005, so I'd have been 20, maybe 19, 20. So
Hogan
that following year, I was up Antrim. Like that. So we were beating the county final in September, October time. Within 3 weeks, I was training with Antrim senior squad for the first time. So I was called up on the back of that year. That I got that news. I came home, no reason, didn't give me a reason why, just cut me off. I went home and cried my lamps out in the house. Just because you don't realise until it happens to you how hard that is to take. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
And the following year, then we went out and won the championship. And played midfield the whole year. We went out and won the 2006 Antrim Senior Championship the following year, and I never looked back. I've played every game since. Never.
See, when you were cut from the Cargin team, but how did you manage to refocus yourself back in? And then how did you deal with that after? Going to training, talking to your mates. Because sometimes you get dropped, you feel a bit embarrassed going to the boys because you were.
It's hard, and if it was me now, I would be telling. I would be going to younger people and I'd be saying to them, if somebody was cut and drastically cut, I would go and have a word with them and lift them again, tell them, all the really, really, really good things that they can do and offer. I didn't have any of that. Like, I just was cut. That was it. And I just know, even if somebody had came to me and says, listen, 4 or 5 players, even something simple, even if it's not true, and I'm not saying don't lie to people, but I mean, there's a time and a place to sort of, even if you go and say that man hasn't a clue, if you had 4 or 5 players went, that man hasn't a clue, you're going to be needed here, you're the best player we have, but here's what's going to happen and here's what's blah blah. You would get a wee bit of, see, when the whole squad says nothing, it's nearly an acceptance of the right decision. Do you know what I mean? And you're thinking, everybody thinks I shouldn't be on this team, so I think there has to be an element of have a chat with somebody and do that. But how I reacted was, I went home, struggled at the house for a bit. My ma came up to me, my dad came up to me, my brother came up to me. It's a joke, blah, blah, blah. But sure, listen. And I had a couple of brothers were playing on the team. So obviously I wanted them to win. But I came on in the final, and I think I scored 3 or 4 points. In the final, I actually came on with about 20 minutes to go, maybe 15 minutes to go, scored 3 or 4 points. Some goals beat us by maybe 4 or 5 in the end, but not easy. Like, they're all hard moments. People look at that and go, that was one match. But see, that one match, I'll never forget that. Do you know what I mean? That was one game, but that one game I'll never forget. It just etched in your brain.
I think that's great for younger ones like that. So what I took from there was not only individually how to cope with getting cut or dropped, but also as a teammate, go out your way, take 10 seconds and go over that boy that was cut, or even send him a WhatsApp message. Things that can mean so much, even to the best player,
Yeah, and even something as simple, and this is a wee bit off course, a wee bit, but and genuinely because I actually care, but I would make a point of, even when people get injured, even the smallest of injuries that don't get me wrong, somebody stabs a finger or something, they're going to be, but I mean, if somebody gets injured, it doesn't have to be a career-ender injury. It just means people get injured and they're down about it. I would always purposely try and drop them a message to say, well, how's the injury? Because if somebody texts me about an injury, I would think, jeez, this boy thinks I'm important enough to ask, when are you back? When are you going to be back? Jesus, that's fucking great. I can't wait to get back now. And it just changes your mindset a wee bit, as opposed to he's injured, nobody really gives a fuck whether he's injured or not. Do you know what I mean?
That's magic.
You know?
And see, what advice would you give to the managers out there? What should a manager do? Should he go up face to face? Should he go up text them? What advice would you give?
Well, here's my advice. Here's my mindset on a manager. If a manager comes to me if I find out I'm dropped and a manager doesn't come and tell me why, it's either one of two things, really. He knows he's made the wrong decision. He doesn't want to deal with the consequences of it. Okay, or he just doesn't have the balls for it. Right. Either way, it's one of the two. If you can't look somebody in the eye, all I would rather you come up and say to me is, here, and just be totally open. But it's hard to do this, you see, unless you've done it throughout the career, even as small as league match. You go to a league match, the start of the year means nothing. Somebody's dropped. You go to them and you say, this is the reason I have dropped you. And be totally open with them. Just say, I don't think you're in as good a form as him at the minute. That's the God's honest truth. That's all I have, and that's all I have to play for. Or their left half back, I don't think suited to you, and I think it's suited to him better. Fair enough, no problem. That's your decision. Then when it gets to the crunch games at the end of the year and you're dropping, you come up and say, I don't think your form's just right going into this, and I don't think you're in the shape you should be, and I think actually last week you done this and you done that and you done the other, and this is the reason I'm thinking about changing you. Do you know? And that's it. And even if that's coming into your head, put it out early doors. You know, or if
it's not easy. It's not easy for both.
It's not easy, but it's in the long run. It's leadership, and in the long run, it pays off. There's no bullshit then. There's none of this. And I would try and do it if I was a manager, but I don't know if I could, and I don't know how easy it is because I've never been in the position of a manager, and I don't know if it's just as easy as I make it out to be. But if I was having second thoughts about somebody playing a position, and I hadn't made my mind up yet, I would go to that person and say, here's where I stand. I don't have the team picked, don't think your form's on, and this boy here's going to be playing this position. I think you're struggling with him. And give them a week to sort of go F him, I'll go and sort this out, and I'll show him in training I'm built for this, or not. You know, give them a chance.
That's brilliant. So not just boom, day before, it's
not just boom, you're dropped. Right. Well, what can I do to get back on the team? Well, you can't have ready the team named. Oh, shit, right. So I'm bait then. As opposed to go when you in your head think, I don't think I'm going to start him next week. Go to him straight away and say,
well, that's magic.
I think I'm going to struggle to start you next week. Why? Because this is the reasons why. I don't think you played overly well. Well, I'll give you a chance here in the next until I would name this team in 6 days' time to prove me wrong. Right? Okay.
Would you ever go knock on a manager's door? You know, would you ever, if you're not playing or you're not starting?
Yeah.
Would you do that?
Yep. I always say to everybody, and I've said it to Tomas, I've said it to Paul, I've said it to numerous footballers, make the manager manage. He's there to do a job. The manager's job isn't to pick the team. That's the easiest bit of it. The manager's job is to manage what he has, manage the players. So by you saying nothing and going sitting huffing on the bench, and you're just making his life, you're equally as bad, because he's saying nothing to you and you're saying nothing to him. So make his job hard for him, make him work out, because the next day, you know as well, this is all psychology and mindset. Who are you going to drop? If you want to drop somebody, you're going to drop the boy that's going to give you least flack for it, for starters.
That's so true.
That's a fact. It's human nature. So you want to be the boy that goes, right, can you tell me why I'm dropped? Well, here's why. No, well, you're wrong, because this is what happened. You know, and but it's all woven into one. Like, if a manager comes early doors and says, I'm thinking of changing this, he says back to him, well, I don't think you should, because I can do this, this, and this. Right, well, you show me that over the next week, then we'll see. And if you're not, I'll talk to you again. No bother. There you go. Everybody's happy, and you can't really talk about it. So that's what I would say. So I say to Tomas and Paul and these boys all the time, make the manager manage. Go to him. If he drops you and does do it like that, doesn't say anything to you, go to him, ask him the question.
I think there's a wee thing before that too, Mick. It's like, you guys, the level that you and Paul Tomas are at, it's that you're not going up to them, you know, been drinking once a week or haven't not been as fully committed as you should have been. You're going up to them being like, you're not going up. You're going to them fully committed, haven't put the work in, and saying it. They're 100%.
And that's back to the point, Pete. And I've said this so many times to people. When you're going to go do it right, one of the very first conversations we had on this an hour ago. If you're going to do something, do it right, because we've come through this cycle now to match day, big match days. You go to a manager and you say to him, why am I not on? Well, because you didn't play well last week, number one. And number two, I think that's a reflection of how much you've pissed about all year. You missed 2 weeks here, you've missed a week there. I was asked to play for Antrim one year and a few years back, and I was working in the gym and I was struggling to get, and the manager said to me, "Sure, come on a Tuesday, and if you have to miss a Thursday, that's fine." I tried it. At the end of it, 3 months done of it. At the end of it, I said to myself, "Never, ever, ever again." Because I was standing at training. Now, I was working every night of the week and all that sort of stuff, and going to training when I could. But when it came to me being able to speak to a player and say, "You've pissed about here for the last 3 months or last week, you haven't been seen in a week, what is going on?" He could turn around to me and say, "Well, hold on, who are you talking about? You haven't been here on a Thursday night for the last 4 months." And I'd be going, "Well, you know what, you're right." So you lose that control, or you lose that power to even go and speak to anybody. If you're not doing it right, you can't speak to anybody about them not doing it right. And that's the key to it. And if you want to be able to do that and lead a group of players or lead a team, that's exactly how you have to do it. And it comes back to have to be all in. Either all in or you're not. And I actually don't mind people that aren't all in. That's fine. Some people aren't mad and don't want to train 5 nights a week, but at least they're honest with themselves, you know. So
like, that was absolutely magic. I hope I'll get a part 2 and we can talk about the 20s. And hopefully a championship maybe at the end. Now, I said that probably the exact same thing to Niblock here, so a bit of a hypocrite there.
You sold your soul.
That was absolutely magic. There's so many, so much value out there for managers, for young players, for young parents. You know, just magic, man.
No bother, Pete. Great to see you too.
A massive thanks to Michael McCann there for that super interview when it comes to the importance of being all in when it comes to reaching your potential in sport. We hope you or a family member or a friend can take some tips from this interview. And if you'd like to support the interview series, we'd love you to head over and check our new product called 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑𝐄. These are wearable devices to help ensure the safety of a loved one if they're ever found in a vulnerable position. Thanks very much for watching, folks. Looking forward to showing you the next interview.